So namaste everyone, welcome back. Today we have veteran sound designer Madhu Apsaraji with us. He currently also teaches at the Film Institute in Pune. So it's a real pleasure to have you, Madhu sir. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I thought we could just start with what your basic idea is of sound design, how you approach it, and how you work with directors to get their ideas into the soundscape.
Okay, it's a big question. So I think first of all, I don't consider sound as just a technical aspect of cinema. It is. I would think if a director uh, conceives his images with sound, only then sound makes sense in the cinema, in his film. Otherwise it will be like you will make a silent film and add sound to it. But then if you have sound in mind as you are as the images get evolved, uh, then the image, it's not just picture, it's a picture and sound together, the image that gets evolved when you think of a narrative. Then as you would definitely imagine that, if the picture is changing, the narrative is going to change. Similarly, any change in sound also will change the narrative. So that is a kind of when it becomes very crucial, what kind of sound you, the tonality of the sound matters, the information matters, the level at which it appears matters, the timing at which it comes. All this thing becomes very crucial. That is if that kind of a bonding is there with of picture and sound in the image. So I been fortunate to work with some directors who normally have a very good idea of sound as they work on the script. So they would say right from the beginning, this at least one thing for sure, they'll say, some very crucial scene, they'll say, hey, yeah, this scene won't have music, for instance. So then I would ask them, then what will we have there? Then they'll say, oh, sound hoga, anything. They'll say, oh, shutter ka sound hoga, plastic ka sound hoga. When we speak out, what also happens is, the director also hears the sound. When he says, for a particular scene, you say plastic ka sound hoga, he's also hearing the sound. Then it starts, then when he shoots, he's already hearing the sound. There's no plastic around there at that time of shooting. So he thinks, the sound is there. So, and this conversation goes to the cameraman also. He also knows such a plastic ka sound hai yahan pe. So naturally, all of us have a kind of an image where the sound is there and this is the picture. So then when we work, each tonality of the sound becomes very important. Like if you have a plastic sound of a certain kind, then the image is probably doesn't work. But then when you have a certain sound, suddenly you think, it's evolving. So this is what I've been trying to do. And yeah, that's how it is seen. And I think sound design is with the narrative. So when we talk of one image like that, then it is the togetherness and how it evolves. And you can't have an image where everything is like, balanced all the time as well, like picture and sound. There'll be at times you have picture which is strong, and sure, and there will be at some point there will be sound that is strong. Sound as in it can be effects, it can be music, it can be dialogue, anything. So this balance we have to keep. And as in music, it has to have a development. Tonally there has to be something. A development as in it's not the climax, but something from one to the other, it's moving. And in music we know, if something becomes static, then it's very difficult to break that away. You have to probably bring in an outside note to sort of break and go from there, move from there. Similarly, such a thought always happens when we are actually working on the design. So broadly, this is how it is.
So how do you look at music in the whole process of sound design? And one more thing I wanted to know was, so are you generally a part of the the audio visual, combination from the very beginning? How does that pan out usually?
With more directors, and lately now I'm not doing many films, but whichever film I'm doing, there is a kind of discussion that happens pretty much before the shoot. So, in the beginning discussions, definitely I'm not looking at how I'm going to do the sound. I'm only thinking about the story, or the if the director is narrating a story to me, I'm not thinking. I honestly, I'm not thinking of the sound. I'm just thinking only about the story, and then I try and sort of feel the story for myself. And then I would like to talk to the director and sort of clarify for myself, what each character is, and how things are evolving, and what should be the expression of the whole narrative when it is made. Probably he's making it in a certain way, but his intention, how it is perceived, could be something else altogether, which sometimes a director wants to say that, or sometimes he would not say that. But then I have to sort of understand what it is, and then gradually at work, things will evolve. So there is a part, and I would like to be a part of that, audio visual thing. Yeah, but about music, most of the time, the way our industry works is that, very unfortunate thing that happens is, people, they put reference music during the edit. Now, this reference music becomes a kind of bonding from which, all of us gets attached to it, and it's very difficult to move out of it. Now, why it becomes a negative point is that, then for the music composer to come in and bring something new, to evolve something, uh, that probably will not happen. It gets fixed at that moment of time when this reference music is put, and reference music mostly is put from very known composers, or very, so the music itself becomes quite powerful entity there. Yeah.
Hey, speaking about the reference music, this is something I've also noticed, and nowadays there's a lot of jokes going around, about how the in the audiovisual the visual is considered the crux of the film in our industry, and sound is like a stepchild of sorts. So especially in the, I mean, quote unquote commercial space. So how do you look at that? How does that move forward?
It's very unfortunate, I think, because they are. See, I'll tell you a very simple example. I've when I traveled from Kandivali to say Panvel in local train, and like if I have somebody sitting in front and watching a movie on the mobile phone. Now I'm not hearing the sound of the film. I'm just seeing the film, and that too, like I'm just seeing it once in a while. And in this journey of 1.5 hours time, I've watched the whole film, and the whole narrative is with me, and I don't feel like watching it again, because I know what the film is. Now the film is probably, it's a story, and the story is known to me by now. Now then I think, why should that film need sound? It doesn't need sound. It's practically silent. The sound is probably it engaged you when you saw it. I mean, I was not listening to the sound, but whoever has saw the film with the sound, I don't know what more experience he could have. Maybe he would have got another percentage of experience. But it's not that I missed sound when I watched the film. So this happens in the industry when they think, visual is the important thing and sound is a stepchild. So then I would think, they should spend more time and money on the visual and make good silent films. Like Hitchcock had once said, why do you need good sound? We have mastered the way of making silent cinema. So why can't we just make silent cinema? It becomes universal. We can, if somebody in Kerala can make it, and it'll be a hit in Punjab. Whereas with this moment sound comes, there'll be a problem then. They won't understand the dialogues. So that thing happens if sound is considered as an addition or a decorative element.
Hey, moving ahead of that, so unfortunately, in our milieu, music is very closely associated with films. So the music, a bulk of the music sales and that aspect of it is connected to films like an auxiliary. So when you look at music in commercial cinema, for example, and it's often looked at from a sales point of view, right? So you have
Yeah.
songs that are tailored towards a certain market and so on. So how does that work with the cinema then? Because if the audiovisual medium is to be, conjoined, as you said rightfully,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah.
where does that balance occur?
So balance in the sense, see, music by itself, we know, it's a form which can stand on its own. Cinema is quite young compared to music. So music is something, an hour of music somewhere can hold the person for the next, say, 1 month maybe. He will carry it with him, and it's very easy for an acclaimed musician to do that. But for cinema to do that, it's not easy. So when we want to put music together with cinema, see, it's possible. Possibility is that if the music is strong enough, it will take over the cinema. It will take over. It will put cinema aside and music will take over. Uh, I mean, somebody only interested in business, then they don't care how it works. It just works. So I mean, these are two different things altogether. I think it's a music. It's a very old and strong art form. Cinema is a young and a gentle art form compared to music. That gentle as in it is still evolving. So the moment you have music as music, then it will take over cinema. But music can be used as an effect. That is another thing. Yeah. But that again becomes, then it's the same integration of audiovisual elements, in the sense how to bring music not as music but as sound. But obviously, the kind of orchestration which probably you could be doing with effects, but you want to do it with musical instruments, but still it's not forming music. But then if it's disintegrating, then that's also a problem. But then the kind of tonality. There are directors who tried that, actually wanted musical instrument to create sounds, and but still it should not be, the inflections that they create should not form music. That was the idea, and it still evolves. Yes. So the choice is, see, our tradition of storytelling and song, that is one thing which is interesting, and that has a place in our life and in our culture. But when we talk of cinema, I mean, we cannot follow that as the only form. Probably that exists and which is interesting, which we enjoy to a moment. But then it has, how do we grow from there as an art form? This will remain static there. There is song, there's a story, and you put song, and then it remain like that. So that form, and just being there, the problem is that with the kind of change of technology, people would think, I need to know the story, I need to listen to the song. So a mobile phone is quite good enough. Why should I go to a theater? So that also can happen. So if we are talking about cinema as an art form where things can evolve depending on each new person's creativity, then we should give that kind of thought, I guess.
Hey, no, that's very interesting. If we look at cinema as an art form, because this is the question I keep hearing: is cinema an art? Is it not an art? Is it industrial art? So on and so forth. Um how does that work? Because now a writer has one idea. By the time that idea is executed with hazar people in the middle, it has turned into another animal altogether, right?
Yeah.
So, what are your views on that, on cinema as an art and how that?
I would definitely go with the people who think cinema is an art form, and I would like to think it that way. And of course, it involves technology. Technology in everything. There's technique involved. In music, technique is involved. If somebody is going to play an instrument, and from the moment of him holding the instrument to every strike, there's a technique. Once we learn the technique, we create the right note. So that here the technique is little more elaborate. That's all. There's more technique flowing in. There's so much of money, there's so much of popularity, so there are new technology and investments happening. But at the end of it, or at the core of it, it is a form of expression. Like there are filmmakers like Hrithik Ghatak, he had his political social idea, and he said, I made films, I've chosen film to express that. He said, if I have been doing theater, I would have chosen theater to express that. So for him, that art form is like a form of expression. So then he sort of exploited the possibility of picture and the kind of sound he would put in and put it together, and whatever he wanted to express, he expressed. Now, Ray would have done in another way. Manikol has done it in a different way, and like uh, like a French filmmaker, Bresson has done it in a different way. Hitchcock has done it in his way. So each, why I'm saying his way, because each of them has found different ways of integrating picture and sound, and whether there was a narrative in the togetherness, obviously there will be some kind of a narrative. The thing is, it's not just the narrative that would get expressed, but the expression itself, that experience of watching it becomes the expression. I mean, there you imbibe the expression. That expression gets transpired. Now that is where it becomes like an art form. Otherwise, it would have been just a medium of telling a story. So each director would be just telling a story. I mean, that's not the case.
So, you mentioned Manikol. You've worked very closely with Manikol.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how he looked at sound and how it was working with him?
Yeah, Maniji is, see, first of all, who was not like overwhelmed by the idea of cinema as big cinema. In the sense, why I'm saying overwhelmed is, cinema, it's like so much popularity, big screen and all that. So he did not bother about that. He said it's an expression. So for him, he was very close to music. So, I mean, from where he started, he probably shifted quite a lot while towards his later part of life. But then his images, he always wanted picture and sound together. He was very much influenced by Robert Bresson, who has who gives equal importance to picture and sound, or rather, who has said in his notes on the cinematographer that you express whatever is possible in the sound and then bring in the visual. So for in his films, it's not loud sound, but it's the precise positioning and the kind of tone of the sound and the rhythm the sound creates that is locking the film. And the images as in the picture is just the basic information. So in the picture, in a Bresson film, we won't see dramatic picture and dramatic shots. The shots are very simple, but the kind of emotion that expresses the film expresses emotion through the togetherness of picture and sound. So Maniji was very much influenced by this way of filmmaking. Therefore, he had sound very much in his mind when he started work. In fact, he also worked like that. He would buy a microphone, he would buy a recorder. I mean, the mini disc recorder, when it came, he was one of the first person to go and buy it. He said it's very easy. When I go to see locations, I can record sound. And he would record sound, or if we are going to record sound at 4 in the morning, he will also come as if we are going to take a shot. He's all ready, bathed and all like ready. He would come, we do the recording for 2 hours, come back, and after breakfast and all that, put the sound on a speaker, and then he would start listening to it. And he would say, from like if we are listening for the 20 minutes, he'll say, just go to the beginning portion, and then he'll say from this portion to this portion, you make a note that this is like this. So each portion gets identified. Now this is before the shoot is done. So there is a kind of, the kind of effects that are coming to his mind, or he has selected. That selection is with respect to the narrative that he has in his mind. It's not that, this is going to be placed in this particular scene, but a certain sound is there. Now these sounds get placed in the process of, in the post mainly. While shooting is concentrated completely on the picture at that point. But then when the edit happens, you say, bring in that sound, he'll say that string bird, or he'll say, that whatever, that Bhairav theme, which is, he would have named it as like some Bhairav. It could be some effect or something that has come from it. So he would say, you use that and you bring it here, and then let's put it. So, it is a kind of thought, and once it is put and he likes it, you change it and say, oh, yeah, must have. Then he doesn't, it's good. So this is the way he used to work. So there was a kind of, for him, it was always working on things. And then he enjoys it himself. And then together he wanted to create the expression. So therefore, this whole idea of creating cinema with, this has happened and so this will happen and this will happen, that was not there. So there was one kind of an expression that is happening, and then this, and then this, and then something is going to happen. Now, this is very much similar to music, form of music, like when a musician is going to do a raga, he starts with something and then he knows, if I play this note like this, and if I come here, next note is, I should play like that, so that, it evolves like this. Otherwise, the expression of the raga changes. So this, he had a very close similarity with, how a raga is formed and how he creates his cinema.
You've worked with him extensively, and you have also worked on the totally, on the other side of the spectrum. Uh,
Yeah.
so I want to know how your approaches are different when you say work with someone like Mani Kaulji, and then you work on something like Dhoom or whatever it is. How do you approach both things?
I think, you see, it's not, first of all, I, to be frank, personally, to me, when I'm doing such a thing, whatever I'm doing, I need to enjoy it. Yeah, enjoy in the sense, I'm in that space of work. If I'm doing a mainstream film, like a film like Badlapur, for instance, it's a dark film. Now, at that moment, I'm in that story narrative. So when I'm recording a sound, it should just feel to me that, this will work. Now it's another matter when I put it and the director says it doesn't work. So then I would say, this is why it is working, and somebody else would say this is why it's not working. But basically, the expression, if it's not happening, then our logics doesn't work. So it doesn't work. But then I would know, maybe he likes a train sound, but he needs another tone. Then I would go back and record it again and come back, do this. So it hardly matters, whether we are making a film of a certain genre or a certain type. It is the kind of expression and the emotion that we feel at that moment of time. Like we would be listening to, say, Indian classical music, but at another day we'll be listening to a Western classical music. We would be listening to jazz. We would be listening to a rock thing. And each time we enjoy it. And if you have to do something there, we'll also be enjoying it. But if we don't enjoy it, then we can't do it. I can't just go and do it just because I have to be there. I can't do it. I mean, that is not the way I would do it. Just enjoy what we are doing. So it hardly matters what, in which genre you're working. Yeah. It's the people that matters, actually.
So one thing that I've been thinking about, and I'd like to hear your views, is now with change in technology. For example, the whole mobile phone, experience, how people listen has changed. The whole loudness wars was started in the middle. Uh, everyone is, a lot of people are listening to MP3 files on low-fi devices and so on. And that affects the way, for example, we as musicians compose and mix and master, because the end listener is not listening to it the way we are listening to it. So how do you view that? And also with that, another thing that has happened with social media and so on is a drop in attention spans. So
Yeah.
how does that change the game, both in cinema and otherwise?
Yeah, this is a big problem, I think. I mean, I really, it is a problem of great concern, and it's an unavoidable problem. But I think it has affected cinema, and I mean, it has affected both. I mean, it has affected differently to for cinema and music. Now in cinema, what has happened is, there was we can even say, there was a time people made films only for big screen. When we shot, when you did the post, we only thought, how this is going to be on a big screen. And it's mixed, especially sound, and the cameraman would do the color correction so that, on a screen, big screen, how it is going to be there. But now people have started thinking, no, big screen is there, but immediately this thought will come, oh, it won't be seen on a small screen. Small screen, at some point it was television, but now it is mobile phone. Mobile phone resolutions have increased, but still there is a thing of, there is a kind of limitation that the way it is coming up on the mobile phone. Now this is something we cannot stop. This is the technology, and this is evolving, and people without lack of time, money, spending less money, and all that is going to happen. But I think as people who make it, it is very important to stick to one's priority. Like if the filmmakers give up for it, and they all think, it's going to be made for mobile phone, then there is going to be a disaster. But the filmmaker insists that, this film is made for big screen. So there is a possibility that, certain film people, even if they see it on a mobile phone, they think, maybe I should just see it there. It is a different experience. And there are times, people have gone to the theater and seen the film. Now with cinema, this we have seen, this is happening. Otherwise, theaters would be shut down, but theaters are still there and on. But now, so much of social media happening, now we don't know what's going to happen after this pandemic and all that. But so far, there's always been this urge to go to theater and see it, and people thought, it's a compromise if I'm watching it on a phone. But with music, unfortunately, they are okay listening to it on the phone as well. Many times I think, people don't even realize it's not the same as sitting in front of a musician and listening. Because again, going back to what we said, about audio-visual thing, visual has this thing of, visual is something that we think, we need to see it in detail on so that we get convinced. Sound, somewhere, we think once we have the information, we think we are okay. I've got the information. I'm done with it. Now it becomes a very. This is a kind of this is a faculty in our system of the five senses we have. This is one of the senses we sort of ignore in our lives completely. But at the same time, this sense is sort of controlling us all the time. Like, if you are in a noisy environment, though you're with your friends and you have enjoyed the conversation with your friends, but at the end of it, you would not have the same feeling as if you have been with the same friend in a quieter atmosphere. That kind of experience that has come to us with that loud sound, or maybe one loud sound recurring once in a while. Whatever that has changed us during that time, that is going to stay. Now, every day, right from morning till night, and even while we sleep, sound is there. We are ignoring it, but it's still there. Now, this is controlling our lives. If we are at some points going to be aware of this sound, then we will want to know about the tonality. Like if I am listening to a certain sound on a phone maybe, and then when I hear it directly from, if it's a music piece and I directly play it by a musician, and if I'm able to recognize there's a difference between the two, then I would want to go back and listen to it in the original space and the original way of. The best way is like sitting with the musician and listening to it. Otherwise, at least a system which reproduces without compression and so much of distortion. If that doesn't happen, then we will continue going like this. Now, the only way to stop to put break to this is that, we have to tell people that, like with the FTI students, I've taken the students to the Gurukul, Panvel Gurukul, when there is a BITEC, and all of them said, so we have never thought, it sounds like that. Because when they don't listen to it directly from the musician, then when they are, recording it, all that they have, their references in the whatever they heard through a YouTube or whichever way. So they are only looking to match that YouTube reference. Now, the moment they go and hear the sound from the musician, then they know, I don't want this kind of punch, this kind of sharpness, this kind of. What I need is that kind of tonality which is expanding. The sound has to breathe somewhere. Like this, what Bahauddin Sahib used to say. He keeps saying the sound has to breathe. Yeah, it should not be like something that is, all creating a punch, but it is a kind of thing that has to evolve each time. An inflection has to come out of it. So this unfortunate kind of wave that is happening of listening to MP3 and just going by it. MP3 is a good format for transfers and all that, but then one has to make sure there's some way of listening from the original. And I think one good thing is whenever we have concerts in like in colleges and or even in many cities and things like that, we see a lot of young people coming. It's not that only old people are coming and listening to 1.5 hour alap. Very young people at 3 o'clock morning 3 o'clock concert at ISER. It was a packed audience of the completely youngsters. Youngsters means the graduates or PG students, but they are there alert. It's not that they don't want it. So probably the population is increasing, but this population is small, but they also keep increasing, I guess.
You mentioned Bahauddin Saab. Could you tell us more about your association with him and Drupad and what's going on there?
Yeah, okay. Bahauddin Saab was introduced to me by Maniji, Manikal. So he was, Manikal himself was a disciple of Ustad Zia Mohyuddin Dadar Saab. And unfortunately, I could not meet him. So I joined Manikal soon after Ustad had passed away. So Maniji used to take me to the Gurukul at Panvel. So I started being there for every BITECs and for Guru Purnima, Dasara, and for then later for Bade Ustad's Barsi or birthday. There will be a kind of BITEC where students would come and play, and I would listen, and then I would also record just for for an archival purpose. And then slowly I picked up interest myself and started learning sitar from Bach. So they have again a very they don't they are not bothered about how fast you learn. I must have been a very slow learner because of my work and things like that. I'm not like regularly practicing. But then each time I go there, I very peacefully listen to whatever you are playing. But then they have a way of teaching. They would make you do the murchana. For some students, they'll be doing only for 3 years. Some students would be doing it 4 years. Some would be doing for 2.5 years. But at least for 2 years, you're just doing murchana. It's not that you taught a raga or something. Then they'll teach one raga, like maybe the next. Now, I'm told, one of the very known musician, Pandit Pushparaj Koshti ji, he used to learn Yaman for about 12 years from Bade Ustad. Even if Ustad told him, kuch aur ho jaye, he would say, main Yaman bajata hu. So it took a long time. He kept on learning one raga. And then when it opened up like, his playing is really divine. So they'll teach you one raga for a long time. And then, next comes. There's no hurry in teaching. And therefore, if you are not a performer and if you're not into that game, then you don't need to hurry in make a hurry in learning. You can learn, and that learning is like you're just imbibing it to yourself, and then it comes out. So all the students whoever come there, they get a kind of attachment to the gurukul, to the music, to the people, and with the fellow students and all that, because it's not just the raga. It becomes the name of the raga is somewhere, and then the expression is that is there. And each musician, like they all play like if Bahauddin Sahib is playing Yaman today, then tomorrow he plays Yaman. It's both Yaman, but it will be two different expressions. So that kind of freedom is something that Ustad teaches, and that's what they teach us as well. You are free to express yourself. It's not, you are not playing the raga, you're just expressing the raga through yourself. So this, it's just a term to say, but then you have to live through it to do it, I think. So that's the way they teach things.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And
It is.
I remember listening to him when you were recording him at FTI once. It's a
Uh-huh.
it's a giant sound. Yeah, it's something else. The Rudravina is an instrument.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Something got muted. Hello?
Ah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, okay.
So before we wrap up, I'd like you to suggest to whoever's listening maybe a couple of films that you think have great sound design that we can watch, and maybe a book or two that you can read to know more about sound design and explore it more.
I think on cinema, for sound design or for cinema, this book Notes on the Cinematographer by Robert Bresson is it is an amazing. There is a chapter on sound on image, but it's more on cinema. But sound and sound design comes so much in that. Then probably the other book I would say is that Blink of an Eye by Walter Murch. It's really amazing the way how he thinks the edit and how sound can influence the edit, and generally it is again like constructing the image. Now regarding cinema, I would think of Indian films, maybe Khatak's film, Ritvik Khatak's film, the Mekhe Thakatara. The sound, the way the music is used, the effects are used, and we talked about. You're asking about how music can be used. So Khatak has used music as music, and also it is sometimes it's becoming an effect, and he doesn't. For him, he's not bound by any other. Anything else. It's just the expression that is guiding him. So it's very interesting the way he has done the sound for the. Any of Khatak's film, even the film Ajantrik, for instance, it has a very interesting sound in it. And any of Bresson film, like I would say L'Argent, for instance, it is, or let's say Sergio Leone film, like Once Upon a Time in the West. It has got amazing sound design. It's really amazing sound design, and also the way the music and the effects get integrated. That's really amazing in Sergio Leone, especially in this Once Upon a Time in the West. Yeah, I think there's any of the masters' work. If you take, you find sound and picture has gone. It has come together in a. I mean, in a unique. Each film will find the unique way of putting it together. In fact, that's what Tarkovsky said. It's we're not. Different directors are not creating different genres. What the difference is that in the rhythm of each director is different. So it is the rhythm, and where does the rhythm come from? It's from the visual, it's from the sound, and the togetherness. The image has a new rhythm that it's forming, it's taking.
Fantastic. On that note, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for doing this.
You're most welcome. Yeah.
It's really enriching for me at least, and let's try and meet soon.
Sure.